Millionaire husband hated his pregnant wife and drove her away. 5 years later, she returned stronger with their child. Conrad Blackwood never wanted children, or at least, that was the rumor whispered among high society circles. Married to the soft-spoken Eloise Bennett, an accomplished artist with a heart of gold, Conrad's glittering billionaire life seemed too important to be burdened by domestic obligations. When Eloise became pregnant, everything fell apart. He accused her of trapping him, hurled cruel words that left her shattered, and finally drove her away with nothing but a suitcase. That was 5 years ago. Now, a mysterious businesswoman has returned to town, one who exudes confidence and moves with a grace that has everyone talking. By her side stands a bright-eyed child who calls her Mama, and the father, Conrad Blackwood. To the outside world, Conrad Blackwood personified success. Born into a modest family in North Carolina, he clawed his way to the top through unwavering ambition and a flair for risk-taking. By his early 30s, he was known as a financial prodigy who could transform even the most precarious startup into a thriving empire. Wealth followed, then power, and finally the adoration of a public fascinated by self-made millionaires. At a charity gala in Manhattan, Conrad encountered Eloise Bennett. She stood apart from the chatter of socialites, wearing a deep blue gown that accentuated her calm beauty. Instead of pandering for investment tips, she asked about his philanthropic passions. He found her refreshing a break from the usual crowd of sycophants. In the swirl of that star-studded night, they shared quiet laughter and discovered an unexpected compatibility. She was an artist who adored music and painting. He was a businessman enthralled by visionaries. Soon, headlines declared them the new power couple merging art and commerce. The wedding was a spectacle, an opulent ceremony at the Blackwood estate, with luminaries like Andrew Friedman of Friedman and Friedman Associates and Helena Wentworth, an influential society figure, filling the pews. The press lauded them as an inspiration, calling Eloise a modern muse for Conrad's unstoppable drive. Their honeymoon was spent yachting off the French Riviera, sipping champagne and whispering about the future. Yet beneath the shimmer of their union lay a fragile foundation. Conrad's empire demanded relentless travel. He hopped between New York, London, and Hong Kong. While he closed deals in high-rise boardrooms, Eloise created vibrant canvases in an empty mansion. She tried to adapt to his whirlwind lifestyle, accompanying him on a few business trips, but he seemed perpetually distracted. Their once deep conversations dwindled to brief phone calls, overshadowed by Conrad's urgent obligations. Loneliness settled into Eloise's heart. She missed the days of their courtship, when Conrad would hold her hand during museum visits and discuss his dreams late into the night. Now he returned from overseas exhausted and preoccupied, if he returned at all. The staff at the Blackwood estate greeted her kindly, but she realized she was just another ornament in a realm dedicated to growing fortunes and forging alliances. Then she discovered she was pregnant. Tentative excitement blossomed within her. Surely this news would bring them closer. She imagined Conrad's face lighting up with fatherly pride. But when she finally told him, in what was supposed to be a tender, private moment, his reaction was anything but joyous. He accused her of wanting to derail his ambitions, of trapping him into domestic obligations he never signed up for. His words stung worse than any physical blow. Eloise's attempts to calm him were met with icy disdain. The man who had once professed boundless love now looked at her with resentment. In one harrowing argument, he demanded she leave if she refused to terminate the pregnancy. Fearful and heartbroken, she packed her belongings and left the estate, tears blurring her final glimpse of the opulent foyer. No one knew how quickly a love story could curdle into a tragedy, yet for Eloise, that was the day her world was ripped away. And for Conrad, it was merely an inconvenient snag in his unstoppable climb to greater power and influence. Eloise found herself standing outside the Blackwood estate with just 2 suitcases, trembling from the confrontation that had unraveled everything she thought she knew. She clutched the edge of her coat, trying to steady her breaths. Rain started to fall, mingling with the tears on her cheeks. In her mind's eye, she still saw Conrad's face contorted with anger, his words echoing, "You never asked if I wanted a child." A nearby taxi driver, sensing her distress, offered to help load her luggage. She slid into the back seat, numb. "Where to?" he asked, but Eloise had no immediate answer. Her family lived across the country in Seattle, and traveling there felt like admitting complete defeat. In a shaky voice, she instructed the driver to head to the nearest upscale hotel. She wanted a quiet room where she could think. That night, Eloise stared at the stark white walls of her suite, her mind whirling with questions. She tried calling Conrad once more, hoping he might calm down, but his phone went straight to voicemail. The next morning, she found her bank account still intact. Conrad had not blocked her access. Perhaps it was an oversight, or perhaps he considered it hush money. Either way, Eloise decided she couldn't remain in Manhattan, surrounded by the reminders of her humiliation. She slipped out of the city, relocating to a small coastal town in Maine she had visited once during a summer art retreat. It felt remote, a perfect place to hide from paparazzi, or the high society gossip that might erupt if anyone realized she was pregnant. She rented a modest cottage near the water. Despite her heartbreak, Eloise resolved not to let despair define her next steps. She was carrying a life inside her, an innocent child who deserved a mother's love. At first, she struggled to adapt. She had no close friends in this quiet Maine town, and her belly swelled as weeks passed. She worried about paying for a baby's expenses, despite having some savings. Yet, as her pregnancy advanced, Eloise discovered a resilience she never knew she possessed. She sold a few of her paintings online, using her maiden name to avoid attention. Gradually, her vibrant art found a small but appreciative audience, enough to keep her afloat financially. Her loneliness was eased by a kind neighbor, Pauline Withers, an elderly widow who offered warm meals and gentle conversation. Pauline noticed Eloise's blossoming pregnancy and, with a maternal warmth, insisted on accompanying her to doctor appointments. Over herbal teas in Pauline's cozy kitchen, Eloise found a listening ear. Slowly, she shared the barest details that her marriage ended when her husband rejected the baby. Pauline never pressed for more. "You're stronger than you think," she said, patting Eloise's hand. "Life can be harsh, but sometimes heartbreak molds us into who we're meant to be." Eloise wasn't sure she believed that yet, but she clung to the hope that this child, her child, would be worth every tear she had shed. Months later, she went into labor on a crisp autumn morning. With Pauline's help, she delivered a baby girl in a nearby hospital. The doctors marveled at Eloise's calm determination, and when they placed the tiny infant in her arms, she felt a surge of fierce love. Amelia Bennett, she named her daughter, giving her Eloise's maiden name, no reference to the father who had cast them aside. In that moment, Eloise vowed to protect Amelia with every fiber of her being. Conrad Blackwood might have turned away, but Eloise would forge a future on her own terms, no matter how solitary or demanding it proved to be. Eloise's first year as a single mother tested her in ways she'd never experienced. Amelia needed constant care, and Eloise juggled the exhaustion of nighttime feedings with the struggle to earn a living. Sleep was scarce, and the demands of motherhood left her little time to dwell on Conrad's betrayal. In the quiet moments, however, the past would gnaw at her. She wondered if Conrad ever thought about the life he had rejected. But Amelia's bright eyes and tiny laughter acted as an anchor. She found unexpected solace watching her daughter giggle at the simplest wonders: a flickering candle, the ocean breeze ruffling her hair. That playful innocence reminded Eloise that her child deserved more than regret and bitterness. So she painted whenever Amelia napped, pouring her raw emotions onto canvas. Scenes of heartbreak mingled with glimpses of hope, swirling into pieces that spoke of loss but also resilience. Pauline continued to lend support, babysitting Amelia while Eloise traveled to art fairs in nearby towns. Word spread about her intense, evocative artwork. Over time, she received commissions from small galleries. Slowly, her reputation grew beyond the sleepy Maine community. Some recognized her style from her earlier exhibitions back in Manhattan, but she remained discreet, signing only her first name or using E. Bennett. Still, finances were tight. Eloise resisted using more of Conrad's money than necessary. It felt tainted. She paid the bills with her painting income and a meager portion of the joint account, determined not to rely on his fortune. When Amelia turned 2, Eloise realized their small cottage was no longer big enough for her expanding studio. She began searching for better opportunities to showcase her art. A turning point came when an influential Boston gallery owner, Martin Rothschild, stumbled upon Eloise's work during a charity auction in Maine. Struck by the raw passion in her paintings, he offered her a spot in his upcoming gallery exhibition, a leap forward for any emerging artist. Nervous yet excited, Eloise accepted. The exhibition was a resounding success. Critics praised her distinctive blend of color and emotion, labeling her pieces stirring reflections of the human spirit. Martin, delighted by the response, introduced her to well-heeled clients who commissioned private works. Soon, Eloise's income soared beyond what she once dreamed possible. She no longer had to weigh every grocery purchase against her painting supplies. Throughout this whirlwind, Amelia thrived. The child, with her curly dark hair, had Eloise's gentle nature and an uncanny spark in her eyes that sometimes reminded Eloise of Conrad. Each time that flicker appeared, Eloise felt a pang, part sorrow, part acceptance, that Amelia had a father out there who had never met her. But she pushed that pain aside, focusing on building a stable life for her daughter. Within a few short years, Eloise emerged as a rising star in the New England art scene. She managed to buy a small home closer to Boston, complete with a sunlit studio, a perfect environment to nurture Amelia and her creative pursuits. Living under her maiden name, Eloise Bennett, gave her the freedom to craft a new identity far from the superficial society dinners where she once held Conrad's arm. But she knew deep down that her past with Conrad remained a dormant secret. A confrontation still loomed, and it seemed only a matter of time before fate or circumstance would draw them back into each other's orbit, especially now that Eloise was no longer the vulnerable figure he had dismissed. In the 5 years since Eloise disappeared, Conrad Blackwood soared to new financial heights. He orchestrated 2 colossal mergers and ventured into real estate developments in Asia. Media outlets hailed him as a visionary. He graced the covers of business magazines and commanded speaking engagements on entrepreneurship. Whenever a journalist asked about his personal life, he dodged with polished ease. Rumors swirled that his wife had left him, but no confirmed details surfaced. His corporate machine functioned too seamlessly to let scandal overshadow his successes. Yet behind the veneer of triumph, Conrad experienced moments of inexplicable emptiness. Late at night, in his penthouse overlooking Manhattan, he sometimes paused at the window, swirling a glass of whiskey, remembering fleeting flashes of Eloise, the softness of her voice, the warmth of her smile. He had never publicly acknowledged her departure. He told close associates they had grown apart and left it at that. Only a few high society insiders gossiped about Eloise's sudden disappearance, but with no official statement. The whispers faded. Conrad often rationalized that Eloise's pregnancy was a betrayal, a sabotage to his grand ambitions. He still harbored resentment, believing she'd intentionally withheld birth control or manipulated him. The idea of fatherhood, with its obligations and unpredictability, clashed with his rigid worldview. Yet, as years passed, seeds of doubt planted themselves in his mind. In quiet moments, a voice asked, "What if you made the wrong choice?" He rarely allowed that thought to linger. Instead, he busied himself with expansions and philanthropic endeavors. He became a patron of prestigious art galas, ironically sponsoring multiple up-and-coming artists in memory of Eloise's passion. Some nights, as he mingled at these events, a pang of longing hit him. He'd think he spotted her in the crowd. But every time, it was a stranger. The ache of regret never fully dissipated. Despite his outward success, Conrad's personal life remained barren. He dabbled in superficial relationships, model girlfriends, the occasional actress, but none lasted more than a few months. He refused to share his penthouse or his heart, guarding himself against any threat to his routine. Even his parents, once proud of his achievements, noticed a guarded edge in him. When they gently asked about grandchildren or a stable family life, he dismissed the topic. One evening, Andrew Friedman, Conrad's longtime mentor and a veteran investor, summoned him to dinner. Over an expensive bottle of red wine, Friedman expressed concern that Conrad was hitting a personal plateau. "Men like us, we thrive on success," Friedman mused, "but we also need meaning beyond the deals." Conrad bristled. He didn't appreciate Friedman's insinuation that something was amiss. He had wealth, influence, why wouldn't he be content? Still, Friedman's words stuck with him. Walking back to his car, Conrad spotted a mother cradling a toddler, the child's laughter echoing against skyscrapers. A pang tightened his chest. In that fleeting moment, he wondered if his child had grown somewhere far away. Living a life without him, he dismissed the notion as sentimentality. Eloise had her way, I had mine, he told himself, determined not to let past shadows derail his unstoppable momentum. But destinies often intersect again, especially when one forcibly tries to seal the past behind locked doors. For Conrad, the day of reckoning was drawing near, far closer than he could suspect. On a sunny afternoon in Boston, Eloise Bennett was finalizing the details for a collaborative art exhibit curated by Martin Rothschild's gallery. The show promised to be her most significant exposure, yet local press teased it as a must-see for art connoisseurs. At the same time, she had just received an invitation from a philanthropic organization called the Hannah Frost Foundation, seeking to purchase several paintings for their upcoming fundraiser. The foundation specialized in supporting women's shelters and programs. Eloise admired their work deeply. Amelia, now a spirited 5-year-old, bounded around Eloise's home studio, fascinated by paintbrushes and canvases. She was a bright child, quick to learn and unstoppable in her curiosity. Eloise, busy packing finished pieces for shipping, paused to watch her daughter swirl. Safe, washable paint on a small easel. The joy in Amelia's eyes mirrored the happiness Eloise once knew with Conrad before everything shattered. That day, Eloise's phone buzzed with an unknown Manhattan number. Confusion flickered across her face as she answered. The caller introduced herself as Christine Holden, Assistant Director of the Hannah Frost Foundation. Christine explained that the foundation's primary sponsor was a high-profile billionaire who had offered to host a lavish charity gala in Manhattan. Part of the event would feature an auction of curated artworks, including Eloise's. Eloise hesitated. Traveling to Manhattan risked crossing paths with her old life. But Christine's excitement was contagious. "Your style resonates with our mission," she said. "We want your presence to highlight the artists behind these works." The gala was just a month away. Could Eloise stand to re-enter Conrad's city with Amelia in tow? Ultimately, Eloise felt compelled by the chance to advocate for women's empowerment, her new guiding principle after surviving her own crisis. She agreed on the condition that the foundation handle her accommodations and that they keep her personal details private. Christine cheerfully promised every courtesy. With a mix of apprehension and determination, Eloise began preparing for a trip that would inevitably bring her face to face with ghosts from her past. Amelia, oblivious to the gravity of this plan, cheered at the idea of visiting Mommy's old city. Eloise decided to frame it as an adventure, a chance to show her daughter the museums, the city lights, and maybe Central Park. She braced herself for the possibility of seeing Conrad or someone from his circle. After all, he was no stranger to galas. He might as well be the king of them in Manhattan. But she reminded herself she was no longer that timid wife. Now she was an established artist, a mother and a survivor. She arranged for Martin Rothschild to help manage her Boston obligations during the trip. Pauline Withers, her ever-supportive neighbor from Maine, planned to join them for a few days in Manhattan, partly for moral support and partly to watch Amelia if Eloise got swamped. One evening, after tucking Amelia into bed, Eloise sat by her studio window, gazing at the city lights from a distance. A swirl of anticipation and dread filled her. She fingered the wedding ring she still kept hidden in a box, recalling Conrad's face the last time she saw him. 5 years was a long time, and she no longer needed his acceptance. Yet she couldn't quell the flutter of anxiety in her heart at the idea of stepping back into his realm, carrying the child he had rejected. With a small, determined breath, Eloise vowed to be strong for Amelia. If fate or destiny led them to cross paths with Conrad Blackwood, then let it be on her terms. She was done running. Manhattan's skyline came into view as Eloise's train glided over the final stretch. Seated beside the window, Amelia's eyes widened at the glittering towers. "It's so big," she exclaimed, pressing her tiny hands against the glass. Eloise managed a gentle smile, ruffling her daughter's hair. "Yes, it is. I used to live here." Amelia's questions tumbled forth. "Did you like it? Did Grandma and Grandpa visit you here?" Eloise answered what she could, omitting the chapters of heartbreak. She wasn't ready to share. Meanwhile, Pauline dozed in the next seat, having insisted on accompanying them for at least the first week. When they arrived at Penn Station, Christine Holden from the Hannah Frost Foundation greeted them, exuding genuine warmth. She had arranged for a comfortable suite at a family-friendly hotel. Over the following days, Eloise would attend gala planning meetings, finalize her artworks display, and possibly give a brief talk on the intersection of art and advocacy. Christine assured Eloise that the sponsor's identity remained private, though she teased that the backer was rumored to be a major figure in the city's business scene. Eloise pretended not to notice the chill creeping up her spine at the thought of Conrad. She reasoned there were countless wealthy benefactors in Manhattan. The schedule was hectic. Mornings were spent with Christine at the Foundation's Midtown office, reviewing floor plans for the gala venue. Afternoons found Eloise guiding Amelia through the city's wonders, Times Square's neon chaos, a ferry ride past the Statue of Liberty, a stroll through the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Each time Amelia giggled in delight, Eloise felt her nerves ease, even as a sense of watchfulness lingered. Pauline took Amelia to Central Park one afternoon, so Eloise could rehearse her short speech with Christine. Standing in a chic boardroom, Eloise tested the microphone, feeling uncharacteristically nervous. This moment was not only about her art, it was about proving to herself that she could be in Manhattan, speaking publicly without cowering under the weight of her past. During a break, Christine took a call in the corridor. Eloise fiddled with her note cards, only half listening to the muffled conversation. Then Christine returned with an apologetic smile. Small scheduling shift, she explained. Our sponsor wants a private preview of the artworks tomorrow evening at the gala venue. He specifically asked if you'd be available. Eloise frowned. Is that common, for a sponsor to do a private preview? Christine nodded. He's known for wanting personal insight from the artists before the main event. Usually, it's harmless, a quick walkthrough, some conversation. It helps him prepare remarks or align with the cause. He's quite thorough. Apprehension churned in Eloise's stomach. Something about a secretive, powerful sponsor requesting a private meeting felt ominously familiar. But she also realized she couldn't refuse. This sponsor could help raise substantial funds for the foundation. And to back out now risked damaging her hard-earned professional standing. She forced a smile. Sure, just let me know the time and place. I'll be there. That night, after tucking Amelia in at the hotel, Eloise paced the suite's living room. Pauline watched her quietly. At last, Eloise confided her fear. What if it's him? Pauline's brows furrowed. Then you show him the woman you've become, she replied softly. You have nothing to prove, except that you survived and you've thrived. Eloise nodded, holding back tears. 5 years ago, Conrad had driven her away, pregnant and alone. Now she stood on the brink of unveiling the life she'd built in his absence. Tomorrow might bring old pains to the surface, but it also promised the possibility of closure or confrontation. She squared her shoulders, determined to face whatever lay ahead with the courage motherhood had instilled in her. The following evening, Eloise found herself in a grand ballroom attached to a prestigious Manhattan hotel. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city's skyline, while staff hustled to arrange tables draped in white linen. Christine waited anxiously by the main entrance, clipboard in hand. Eloise wore a sophisticated black dress that exuded quiet elegance far from the girlish gowns she once wore at Conrad's side. Her heart thumped as she skimmed over the curated artworks, double-checking their arrangement. Soft lighting cast warm glows on her pieces, each painting a testament to her journey, storms of color giving way to serene horizons. Christine brushed her arm gently. He should arrive any minute. Eloise inhaled, bracing herself. She clenched her fists briefly, then forced them to relax. Whatever happens, I am stronger now. A cluster of bodyguards entered first, scanning the ballroom. Then, from behind them, stepped Conrad Blackwood. He was every bit the imposing figure. She remembered tall, with crisp, expensive tailoring, hair neatly combed back. Yet there was a slight weariness around his eyes she hadn't seen before. His gaze swept the room before settling on Eloise. Instant recognition lit his face, followed by a jolt of shock that froze him in place. Time seemed to slow. Christine, oblivious to their history, beamed. Mr. Blackwood, this is Miss Eloise Bennett, our featured artist. She'll guide you through her works. Christine paused as she noticed Conrad's reaction. He stood there, eyes wide, mouth parted, as though struggling for air. Eloise managed to keep her composure, though her pulse thundered in her ears. She inclined her head politely. Mr. Blackwood. For a tense moment, neither spoke. Christine glanced between them, puzzled. Then Conrad cleared his throat, forcing a tight smile. Miss Bennett, he said, voice hoarse. I've been looking forward to seeing your collection. Christine, still sensing friction, hastily excused herself to oversee final preparations, leaving the two face to face. Eloise led him among the paintings, describing each piece with professional poise. She highlighted her technique, the emotional subtext, yet never revealed the personal story behind them. All the while, Conrad's gaze kept flicking from the artwork to her. Each syllable of her measured explanation seemed to rattle him further. Finally, they arrived at a piece called Rising Dawn, which depicted a lone figure cradling a child against a stark horizon. The swirling colors in the background suggested adversity giving way to hope. Eloise's heart clenched. She tried not to let her voice waver as she said, "This one captures a turning point in my life." Conrad stared at the painting for a long moment. He ran a hand over his jaw, betraying the tremor in his fingers. "You," he began, then faltered. "Eloise, I heard rumors you left the city." "You were pregnant." She swallowed, mustering calm. "Yes, you made it clear you didn't want a child. So I left." The words hung in the air, blunt and unapologetic. His eyes darkened with a mix of regret and anger. Did you keep it?" he fumbled, evidently uncertain whether their child was alive or had been given up for adoption. The raw vulnerability in his tone pricked at Eloise's heart, but she refused to yield to pity. Her answer was a single, steady nod. "She's 5 years old now." Conrad's breath caught, and he stumbled back half a step. In the swirl of that grand ballroom, the man who had once reigned supreme looked as though the floor had dropped from beneath him. All the corporate deals, the unstoppable ambitions, suddenly paled in comparison. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Eloise, holding her ground, waited for the onslaught of questions or excuses. The confrontation that had simmered for 5 long years was now boiling over, and neither of them could walk away unscathed. For a heartbeat, the opulent ballroom seemed to shrink around them, focusing their entire world on a single truth. Conrad Blackwood had fathered a child he never acknowledged. Eloise could see the tangle of emotions on his face: confusion, regret, fear. Memories of that fateful night in the Blackwood estate corridor when he hurled accusations at her flickered through her mind. 5 years of pain threatened to drown her anew, but she anchored herself in the knowledge of her own resilience. Conrad finally found his voice, though it came out uneven. "She, our daughter, how is she? Does she know about me?" His gaze darted across Eloise's features, searching for answers. "Her name is Amelia," Eloise replied calmly, though her throat felt tight. "She's healthy, happy, and bright. She knows she has a father, but I never fed her false hopes. You didn't want us, so I didn't want her pining for someone who would never come." He winced at the quiet rebuke. "1. I made mistakes," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Before he could add more, Christine's footsteps echoed behind them, carrying news that guests for the private preview were due to arrive soon. Conrad glanced at the approaching staff, panic flooding his expression. He leaned toward Eloise, voice urgent. "Please, can we speak in private later?" Eloise hesitated, her anger battling a flicker of compassion. She saw how undone he looked, a far cry from the arrogant businessman who dismissed her pregnancy as an inconvenience. Against her better judgment, she gave a single nod. "After the preview, we'll talk." The staff ushered in select patrons, a swirl of philanthropic elites who had donated generously to the foundation. Conrad, forced to resume his sponsor persona, stood with practiced poise, greeting acquaintances. Eloise fielded questions about her paintings, though her mind churned with the revelation that Conrad was the unseen benefactor behind this event. As the evening wore on, Conrad never strayed far from Eloise's vicinity. Their gazes occasionally locked across the room, each time stirring uneasy electricity in her chest. She spoke with donors about the meaning behind her work, careful not to let personal details slip. Her paintings had always been an expression of her journey, but she realized that tonight, more than any other, she had to protect her boundaries. By the time the last patron left, Eloise's head throbbed from polite conversation. Christine apologized for the long night, scheduling final instructions for the official gala the following week. Conrad lingered, presumably waiting for Eloise. She felt torn between wanting to flee and needing closure. They found a quiet corridor near the ballroom's exit, empty but for a dim light overhead. Conrad asked softly, "Where are you staying?" I'd like to see Amelia. His voice trembled on the last word, as if he had just begun to grasp the gravity of fatherhood. Eloise's protective instincts flared. You don't get to swoop in because of some moral epiphany. You told me to leave when I was pregnant, remember? You made me feel worthless, like a burden. Her eyes glistened with tears she refused to let fall. Amelia deserves stability, not half measures. I need to be sure you won't hurt her the way you hurt me. Conrad's face twisted with remorse. He raked a hand through his hair. I was terrified. I'd convinced myself having a child would ruin everything I'd built. It was selfish, short-sighted. But I can't fix the past. I can only try to be part of her life now. They stared at each other, the corridor's silence echoing with the unspoken years. Finally, Eloise relented slightly. We're at the Gardenia Suites Hotel. She's with a friend, Pauline. If you want to talk about this, meet me at the cafe next door tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. We'll discuss if or how you can see Amelia. Thank you, Conrad whispered. He stepped forward, as if he wanted to embrace her, but Eloise stepped back. Then she turned and walked away, her heart a riot of conflicting emotions. Behind her, Conrad remained rooted in the corridor, watching her recede like a figure slipping through the cracks of time. They both knew the easy illusions of the past had shattered. What remained was raw accountability and a 5-year-old child. They each loved in vastly different ways. Morning light filtered through the windows of La Vie en Rose, the small cafe adjacent to the Gardenia Suites. Eloise arrived just before 9, ordering a latte and finding a secluded table near the back. The hush of the place, broken by soft French music, helped steady her nerves. She had left Amelia in Pauline's care at the hotel, explaining she needed a meeting with someone from her past. At 9:05, Conrad slipped through the cafe's entrance, scanning the room until he spotted Eloise. He approached with cautious steps, wearing a neatly pressed suit that seemed out of place in the relaxed setting. She motioned for him to sit. For a moment, neither spoke. Eloise sipped her latte, ignoring the swirl of emotions behind her calm expression. Conrad broke the silence. "Thank you for meeting me," she responded with a slight nod. "I'll get to the point, Conrad. Amelia is my priority. I won't allow anything or anyone that threatens her well-being." He swallowed hard. "I understand." His hands fidgeted with a sugar packet on the table. "I want to be in her life. I know I don't deserve an easy path to that, but I'm asking you to let me try." Eloise examined him, searching for sincerity. "Why now? Because you recognized me at the gala? Because you can't handle the guilt of discovering you actually have a child?" His jaw tightened. "It's not just guilt. I've had regrets for a long time." She raised an eyebrow, and he quickly clarified, "I'm not excusing my past behavior. I was cruel and selfish. I told myself a child would derail my ambitions and that your pregnancy was a betrayal. I see now how warped that was." He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a tiny photo. "This might seem strange, but I've kept this for years." Eloise recognized it. A snapshot from their honeymoon, her arms looped around his neck, both smiling at the camera in candid bliss. She felt her throat constrict, remembering how happy she was back then before everything darkened. "I look at it sometimes," he continued, voice rough with unspoken emotion, "wondering if we could have built a real family if I hadn't pushed you away." Eloise stared at the photo, a swirl of old heartbreak threatening to surface. She steadied herself, reminding herself how far she had come. "If you truly want a relationship with Amelia, you'll have to prove yourself. That means consistent effort. You don't get to waltz in and out of her life. She's a child, not a business acquisition." Conrad nodded, eyes downcast. "I'll do whatever it takes. I've already assigned more responsibilities at my firm to my executive team. Friedman and Friedman can run without me, overshadowing everything. I want to be present for her." Eloise tapped her fingers on the table. "We start slowly. supervised visits in public places. You'll meet her as a family friend for now. I need to see how she responds to you and how reliable you are. If that works, we can figure out the rest." Relief flickered across Conrad's face. "Thank you. I appreciate any chance you give me." She felt her eyes sting with unshed tears. "This is for Amelia. Don't mistake it for forgiveness." "That might never come." Conrad nodded, swallowing his pride. "I understand." They settled on a plan. The first meeting would be at a children's play cafe near the hotel in 2 days. Eloise would introduce Conrad as a friend from her past. If Amelia felt comfortable, they might share lunch. No promises beyond that. As they parted ways outside La Vie en Rose, Eloise realized her hands were trembling. Conrad remained on the sidewalk, watching her go with a haunted expression. She remembered a time when such a look would have melted her heart. But now all that mattered was Amelia's happiness. For better or worse, they had begun a tentative new chapter, one that could either heal old wounds or rip them further apart. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of nerves. Eloise was torn between dread and a flicker of cautious optimism. Pauline offered steady reassurance, reminding her that controlling the pace of each meeting could ensure Amelia's emotional safety. Amelia, meanwhile, was delighted when her mother mentioned a special friend would join them at a children's cafe for games and lunch. The child didn't suspect the magnitude of this encounter. Finally, the day arrived. The cozy castle, a themed play cafe, was bustling with families. Bright murals and laughter reverberated through the space. Eloise guided Amelia past a cluster of kids building towers with foam blocks. Pauline followed at a short distance, ready to step in if needed. Conrad waited near a corner table, fidgeting with a toy princess crown an employee had jokingly handed him. He glanced up, spotting Eloise and Amelia across the cafe. She could see the tension in his posture. "Stay calm," she told herself, forcing a polite smile. "Amelia," she said gently, stopping a few steps away, "this is Mr. Conrad. He's an old friend of Mommy's." Conrad's eyes flickered with longing at the introduction, but he composed himself. "Hi, Mr. Conrad," Amelia chirped, studying him curiously. "Do you like princess crowns?" She eyed the plastic tiara in his hand. A ghost of a smile curved his lips. "I'm more of a business suit guy, but for today, sure." She giggled, stepping forward to place the crown on his head. Conrad bent down awkwardly, letting her adjust it. "You look like a king," Amelia declared. Eloise felt her chest tighten at how naturally Amelia accepted him. If only she knew, Eloise thought. They found a table in the children's section, ordering kid-friendly snacks. While Amelia devoured apple slices and peanut butter sandwiches, Conrad asked about her favorite colors, games, and what she liked to draw. She chatted freely about her paintings with Mommy, her stuffed bunny named Buttons, and her new best friend back home. Conrad listened intently, nodding and occasionally exchanging glances with Eloise. At one point, a staff member announced a group story time. Amelia's eyes lit up, and she dashed off to join the circle of children. Conrad watched her with quiet awe. He leaned closer to Eloise. "She's incredible," he murmured. "Thank you for raising her." Eloise's heart clenched. "She's her own little person. I just gave her a safe place." She tried to keep her tone neutral, but emotion lingered beneath the surface. When storytime ended, Amelia returned with a paper crown she had decorated. She plopped down beside Conrad, insisting he compare it to the plastic one on his head. Laughing softly, he swapped them. "Yours is nicer," he said, voice gentle. Eloise observed the scene with a mixture of relief and heartbreak. Conrad was making an effort. He didn't push too hard or try to claim fatherly authority. He simply engaged with Amelia, as though trying to soak up every moment. For her part, Amelia seemed to accept him with the open-hearted innocence only a child can possess. After an hour, Eloise decided it was enough for one day. They prepared to leave, and Amelia asked if Mr. Conrad would see them again. Conrad looked to Eloise, silently asking permission. She nodded, but quietly reminded him, "We take this one step at a time." He crouched beside Amelia, giving her a small wave. "I'd love to see you again, if your mom says it's okay." Amelia beamed. They parted ways with no grand gestures, just a short hug from Amelia, who declared him fun. Outside, Pauline offered a discreet thumbs up, while Eloise breathed a shaky exhale. Conrad stood by the door, the plastic crown still in hand, watching them go. Though only a single meeting, it felt monumental, a father glimpsing the child who, until now, existed only in the margins of his regrets. As Eloise led Amelia away, she wondered if letting Conrad in might heal more than just a father-daughter rift. Perhaps it could finally bring Eloise some measure of peace. The days following that first meeting were an emotional roller coaster. Conrad texted Eloise daily, checking on Amelia, sharing how meaningful it had been to spend even a brief hour with her. His messages radiated a sense of wonder and humility she'd never seen in him before. Eloise maintained cautious boundaries, she replied, politely, but avoided personal details. Still, her anger at him had begun to thaw, replaced by a cautious hope that he might be sincere in wanting to be a father. Meanwhile, the city buzzed about the upcoming Hannah Frost Foundation Gala. Invitations circulated among Manhattan's elite, promising a glamorous evening of philanthropy and art. Eloise, slated to speak about her pieces, found her presence had become a selling point, the reclusive artist with a powerful story, though the specifics remained hidden. She tried to focus on that professional milestone, even as her personal life loomed larger each day. One afternoon, Conrad invited Eloise to lunch without Amelia, suggesting they discuss how to handle future visits. She agreed, on the condition they meet in a public place again. They chose an upscale bistro near Central Park. Eloise arrived to find Conrad already seated, tapping his phone nervously. He rose, pulling out her chair. "Thank you for coming." She settled in, scanning the menu. "Let's talk about Amelia. She's enjoyed her time with you, but we need to build trust." Conrad nodded earnestly. "I want to do things right. I'm prepared to set aside time every week Saturdays, if that works just for her. Maybe we explore the city together. Museums, parks, maybe a kiddie show if she's interested." Eloise watched him carefully, assessing if his newfound enthusiasm would hold under pressure. "She loves museums and music, but please remember, if you promise something, you have to follow through." He looked her straight in the eye. "I will, Eloise, I won't repeat my mistakes." For a moment, their gazes locked, and she saw the regret he'd carried for 5 years. "Why did you hate the idea of a child so much back then?" she asked softly, voice trembling with old wounds. Conrad exhaled. "My father was distant, obsessed with his business, and I hated the insecurity. I told myself I'd never replicate that cycle. But when you got pregnant, I panicked. I feared I'd become my father, a man who thought providing money was enough, while ignoring emotional support." He paused, knuckles whitening around his water glass. "And ironically, I became exactly that. But worse, I pushed you away. It was irrational, selfish, and I can't fix it, but I want to be better now." Eloise felt tears sting her eyes. She recalled the countless nights, pregnant and alone, wishing Conrad would show even a fraction of that vulnerability. "Amelia deserves your best," she murmured. "If you're genuine, I'll let you into her life." But the moment you falter, she cut herself off, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I won't," he promised in a hushed tone. "If you doubt me, watch my actions. I'll show up." They spoke a while longer, hashing out practical steps. Eloise insisted that any introduction of Conrad as Amelia's father must wait until Amelia felt more comfortable. He reluctantly agreed. Before parting, he asked if she might consider letting him fund some of Amelia's expenses. She bristled at first, recalling how once upon a time she'd been cast aside. But she admitted that Amelia's future education, healthcare, mattered more than pride. "I'll think about it," she said, ending the conversation. She rose, leaving Conrad alone at the table, eyes downcast in lingering guilt. Outside, as she walked along the bustling street, she realized the conversation felt oddly cathartic. For the first time in years, she had confronted the man who shattered her world, and she hadn't crumbled. She emerged feeling stronger, albeit still wary. Now, only time would tell if Conrad's transformation had roots or was merely a fleeting contrition. The night of the Hannah Frost Foundation Gala arrived in a swirl of anticipation. A red carpet welcomed Manhattan's elite to the lavish hotel ballroom where Eloise's paintings were displayed. Strings of fairy lights sparkled overhead, while tuxedos and gowns formed a tapestry of glamour. Photographers snapped away, capturing philanthropic celebrities, socialites, and business moguls converging for a charitable cause. Eloise stood near her art exhibit, heart pounding under her elegant emerald dress. She wore her hair pinned in a loose chignon, exuding the confident aura of a woman who had forged her own path. This was her moment to shine as an artist, but also a silent showdown with the past. For the first time in 5 years, she and Conrad would appear in public in the same space, no longer as a superficial couple, but as two individuals sharing a secret bond, their daughter. Pauline had taken Amelia back to the hotel suite, knowing the gala was too adult for a 5-year-old. Still, Eloise wished her child could witness the moment when her mother finally stood on equal footing with the city's elite. Christine Holden spotted Eloise, rushing over. "We have a full house. Your pieces are garnering huge interest, and Mr. Blackwood will be introducing you before your speech." A flicker of tension ran through Eloise, so Conrad would publicly vouch for her artistry. The concept felt surreal, yet she inhaled, reminding herself she'd earned this spotlight. Minutes later, Conrad took the stage, looking poised in a tailored midnight blue tuxedo. The crowd hushed, respectful of his status. He delivered a short speech praising the Hannah Frost Foundation's mission to empower women and children. Then he segued into the art segment. "Tonight, we are privileged to present works from a remarkable artist whose pieces embody resilience and hope," he declared, voice steady but tinted with emotion. "Miss Eloise Bennett, please join us." Applause greeted Eloise as she approached the stage. She glanced at Conrad, saw the pride in his eyes, tinged with an unspoken apology. Turning to the microphone, Eloise steadied her breath, addressing the room in clear, measured tones. She spoke of how her paintings captured journeys from despair to renewal, how each brushstroke told a story of confronting life's harshest lessons, yet refusing to be defined by them. Though she never explicitly mentioned her personal saga, the subtext was palpable. She concluded with gratitude for the Foundation's work supporting women who had faced abuse or abandonment, offering them safe spaces and resources to reclaim their futures. A standing ovation followed. Cameras flashed, capturing her poised form. As Eloise descended from the stage, Conrad quietly extended a hand. She hesitated, then placed her fingertips in his, letting him guide her off the platform. A hush fell over them amid the crowd. "Your speech was beautiful," he murmured. "I'm honored to have supported this cause." She withdrew her hand gently. "Thank you," she replied, subdued. "You did well too." The auction commenced, raising substantial donations. Several of Eloise's paintings sparked competitive bidding, culminating in a record sale that left her both astonished and grateful. Friedman and Friedman Associates milled about, congratulating Conrad on a successful event. Meanwhile, Eloise navigated congratulatory remarks from donors, her cheeks flushed with a mix of excitement and lingering caution. When the night wound down, Eloise found a moment alone on a terrace overlooking the city lights. Conrad soon joined her, a slight tremor in his posture. "I wanted to say goodbye before I leave," he said softly, "and ask if I could see Amelia tomorrow. I was thinking we could visit the Children's Museum before you head back to Boston." Eloise gazed at him, memories of heartbreak dancing in her mind's eye, yet she also remembered how Amelia glowed after their first meeting. "Yes," she said quietly, "let's do that. We'll take it step by step." Conrad's eyes shone with gratitude. "Thank you, Eloise." For a moment, the city's hum embraced them in silent reflection. Two people who had once been husband and wife, torn apart by fear and betrayal, now stood on the precipice of forging a new bond, tentative, fragile but real. In the background, the hum of applause continued, the world seeing them merely as philanthropic allies. Only they knew the deeper tapestry of father, mother, and child that might finally weave them toward a different tomorrow. Life's harshest storms sometimes pave the way for unexpected rebirth. Eloise, once driven away by Conrad's cruel rejection, found her strength in motherhood and art, forging a new identity far from his toxic shadow. Conrad, blinded by ambition and haunted by regret, discovered that no empire, no fortune, could fill the void left by the child he refused to acknowledge. Their reunion in Manhattan, first through a collision at a charity gala, then through cautious visits with Amelia, showcases the power of second chances and the healing that can blossom even after profound betrayal. If this emotional journey resonates with you, if you felt Eloise's courage and Conrad's path to redemption, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more stories of resilience, heartbreak, and the triumph of love, reminding us all that, even in life's darkest chapters, hope and new beginnings can emerge if we dare to face our past.